You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. Lucie Horsch is one of the leading ambassadors for the recorder, and she was to be back here in Winnipeg, virtuosically fluttering her way through a program with the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra. Instead, she performs with the MCO virtually in an online double bill that premieres tonight. First, though, she's joined me remotely from home in the Netherlands. Hello, Lucie. Welcome back to Classic 107.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, for listeners who might need a little bit of a refresher or a reminder, we first welcomed you to the studio way back in 2016. That was your first trip to Canada, wasn't it?
Yes, it was my very first time in Canada, which is funny because I'm actually myself a quarter Canadian. My
No
grandmother is
way.
from Quebec. So it was the first time also for me to visit the country that I'm in a very small part of my DNA is Canadian. So yeah,
What,
was
what do you what do you remember about that trip?
I remember everything. I mean, the way I was welcomed by Anne Manson and the orchestra, and just working together with them was so fantastic. And I remember also very clearly that I was, I think, 16 at the time.
Yeah.
That I felt that I was really taken seriously by her, and that because I think she was the one who invited me, and she gave me a lot of kind of confidence, and yeah, it was great to work together with her in the orchestra. And also just being in Winnipeg was a lot of fun for me. I really like the city. I know all the by now I know the whole map because I've been back there as well
Yeah, yeah, of
once.
course. I've got to ask,
Yeah.
do you still have your Winnipeg sweater that you wore to the interview?
Yes, I still wear it actually a lot. Yes, the red sweater. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm
Yeah.
so glad to hear that. Well, I remember very distinctly being blown away by your playing of some Vivaldi concerti. Like you said, you were 16 years old at the time, and not only your age, but just remarkable your prowess as a player. And it's so mind blowing what you can do with your instrument, an instrument that so many of us know and likely played. In my case, rather miserably in elementary school. Do you find people tell you that often? Oh, the recorder, I played that, but not like you do, kind of thing.
Yes, yeah, a lot of people it has kind of two sides because the good thing is a lot of people know the instrument or have some kind of connection with it from their past.
Hmm.
But the bad side is that usually it's a bad kind of memory or some kind of trauma connected to it because a lot of people were forced to play it in school or they had to play it with the whole classroom together. Luckily, I was never obliged to play the recorder in school. I think maybe then my motivation wouldn't have been as good because I really chose the instrument because I thought, oh, this is something that I can do for myself, and nobody in my surroundings was doing it. My parents are both cellists, and my brother's a violinist. So I really chose the instrument because I thought this is going to be my thing. I can kind of make it my own. So
And
that's always been my yeah.
and make it your own. You most certainly have. Do you think that that so many people have it as a foundational part of music education? Does that make it a more relatable instrument, whether people or not remember it fondly or not? Does it make it more relatable because they have that shared sort of experience?
I think so, absolutely, yes. And I think it also says something about the power of the recorder because it is
Mm.
an instrument that's in its essence very simple. Because the way to produce a sound out of the recorder, it might be an ugly sound, but it is easy to make a sound out of the instrument, which is also probably why it was used as a school instrument. Because if you learn to play trumpet as a child, it takes you a month to even get one sound out of it. But with the recorder, such a direct instrument, and that's also what I think is so beautiful about it, because you really can make your own sound and can shape everything you do in the instrument. You can hear immediately in the sound. It's almost, I think it's the instrument which is the most direct as compared to, for example, the human voice.
Hmm.
That's probably the ultimate direct instrument. I think it's the closest to that because there's no like embouchure in between or no pressure, not a reed like with an oboe or a clarinet. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's also what I really love about the instrument.
Well, you've gone on to just an outstanding career, and you've become one of the names synonymous with your instrument. When people think recorder, they think Lucie Horsch, they think Franz Bruggen, they think Nicola Petri, they think Francisco Pran. How does that feel to be in that company?
It's fantastic. I mean, I remember the first time my teacher, when I started playing the recorder at the music school, I he mentioned a lot of times Frans Bruggen to me, the Dutch
Yeah.
famous Dutch recorder player. And at the time, I didn't even know who he was yet, so I wasn't at all aware of the history of the instrument and who had like come before me and made the yeah, who had started this tradition of rediscovering basically the instrument
Hmm.
and making it popular again. So yeah, it feels really special to now be on that list kind of, or at least I don't see myself that way, but yeah, but I was studying with one of the former students of Frans Bruggen. So there is a direct connection, maybe also because the Netherlands is such a small country, but yeah.
Yeah,
But
just
it's
some.
really special to it. I think it's a very close knit community also of recorder players. So it's nice to we kind of all share the same passion, and a lot of people, especially because of all the prejudice that there is against the instrument, I think the people who really love the recorder are really enthusiastic about the instrument. So it's really nice to meet other recorder players and to belong to this kind of community.
Well, I think that many of you have changed and shaped people's opinions of the recorder, because when you hear some of these recordings, it truly is jaw dropping. And we're going to get to your performance in just a little bit, but just to recap for listeners who may not have been following your journey the past few years, in reading your bio, you've continued to tour the world as a chamber musician and soloist with and without orchestra. You've been awarded the prestigious Dutch Music Award, the highest honor bestowed to the Dutch Ministry of Education, Culture, and Science for classical musicians. And you've released not one, but 2 CDs as a Decca exclusive artist. And that is to say nothing of your time spent on Eurovision as a teenage
Oh,
contestant, which is my favorite part of your bio and may or may not be yours. But I love that so much.
yeah, that was a
Um,
really cool experience.
well,
Actually, that video of my Eurovision performance was the thing that Anne Manson told me, that she saw that video and that was what made her want to invite me to Winnipeg.
well, look at that. The power of Eurovision.
So
It
that
continues.
was a good thing that came out of my Eurovision experience. So yeah, if it wasn't,
Well, I mean, all of that to say that you're only in your early 20s now, it's beyond impressive. But I am curious, as someone who's been performing for as long as you have, your first, I think, televised performance I read was when you were 9 years of age. What's this past year and a half been like with the COVID-19 pandemic?
it was, I mean, I think for everyone it has been a hard year just because of all the changes that there have been, I think, in everybody's lives. But especially it has also made me realize the things, I think probably for everybody, if things fall out, you also realize what you miss most and where your passion really lies. So for me, it was kind of a confirmation this whole period of that I really like to be on a stage and just for a real audience, because of course there were many like live stream concerts or last minute organized like online streaming concerts and those kind of things, which is great as a temporary solution. But I think I did notice very clearly that the thing I missed the most is feeling the energy of a real listeners in the hall and sharing this experience. Even going to concerts myself is something I really missed a lot. So yeah.
And though we can't gather to see you in Winnipeg, and one day you'll be back, I'm sure, you have joined the MCO in a double bill, part of their new MCO Spring and Summer Festival. Tell us a little bit about the pieces you've recorded. I think I saw some Bach on the program, some Bach that flute players might know.
Yes, that's true. It's the last movement from the flute partita, originally the flute partita, but all the recorder players steal the steal the partita because we don't. Unfortunately, Johann Sebastian Bach didn't write a solo piece for the recorder. He only used it in his cantatas. But it's the last movement from that partita. It's called the Bourrée Anglaise, so it's like an English peasant dance, and it's a really nice movement. And the other piece is that I recorded is from a Dutch composer, Louis Andriessen. It's called Sweet. He wrote it in 1964, and he wrote it for this Dutch recorder player that we discussed before, Frans Bruggen. And it was one of the very first pieces that kind of started this whole development of new pieces being written by many other composers also for the recorder, and also the rediscovery of the instrument.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. Is you spend so much of your musical performance time in the Baroque, performing music of Bach, as you say, which you've stolen from the flute players. I'm sure they'll forgive you. But so much Vivaldi and so much that is highlighted on your 2 discs. There is a sort of rediscovery, as you say, of the recorder. But there's this massive gap between the Baroque and kind of the present age. Tell us a little bit more about Louis Andriessen's music, because I'm sorry to say that I really don't know his music. Tell us a little bit more about the contemporary take on the recorder.
Yes, so I think the recorder is an instrument that lends itself really, because it's such a versatile instrument. I think it's being used more and more in contemporary pieces, also with like live electronics and those kind of things. Because of the different sound colors I think the instrument has, because we have all these different types that you use for traditionally for different styles of music. So if you would play Baroque music, you would play it on a certain type of instrument, and Renaissance music you would play on a type that's completely differently built. So that's already something I also like about the instrument, is this huge gap that you talked about in the repertoire. So you have really either you play really old music, or it's baroque or renaissance, or it's contemporary, basically. So this whole romantic era is kind of lost. The recorder was kind of disappeared from the scene. So I really like this combination of playing contemporary music and old music as well, because I really feel like I understand rhetorics and how to phrase music, because I've played so much music by Bach and Telemann. And that transfers then into modern pieces as well.
Well, that is really fantastic. And I think people are going to have to check out that contrast in this show. Lucie, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us at Classic 107 again today.
Thanks so much.
It was great connecting with you. Lucie performs tonight, 7:30 in the MCO Double Bill, streaming online and available through June 3rd. You can find more details up at themco.ca or classic107.com under the events tab.